Good afternoon, everyone. Got a big crowd today. Super excited to, I guess everyone's excited about building a sales team. So excited to share some details today about how we've done it, some different tips in hiring, what to look for, even go through a recruiting process that we've used for many years. So just to kind of kick off, if you have questions, just feel free to either chat it as we're going. And then towards the end, I'll let everyone kind of just allow to talk. Actually, I'll go ahead and do that now. So you feel free to interrupt me as you need, but it'll have you muted. So if you just unmute yourself if you have a question or comment during the process. Let's see. All right. And I'm going to mute everyone for now. Let's see. Perfect. You got everyone allowing to talk. But yeah, feel free to either unmute yourself and ask a question as we're going, or you can just chat it and then I'll try to answer it as we're going. See a couple more still coming in here. Got everyone allowed to talk. Awesome. Well, I'll share my screen and we got a lot to go through, so I'll just jump right in. Perfect. So really the goal today is to give you some different tactics and different ideas on how to go out and build a first-class sales team. These are tactics that we have used over the last 14 years to build a sales team. In our TL Connects business where we sell direct. So we'll share specific things that we've done. There's some things that I've gotten advice from other people that have like built 1099 sales teams. So I'll dive into that a little bit as well. We've really focused on W2. So I'll spend a lot of time talking on, why we did that and what we've had success with. So agenda today, we're going to talk about W2 versus 1099, pros and cons, different compensation for W2 employees and 1099 employees. Where do you recruit people? We'll walk through where we've recruited people and where to look for people at. And then what are you looking for in a successful rep? There's some, key things you want to be thinking about when you're interviewing and trying to find a rep that's going to last. And then finally, we'll wrap up with our interview process. I'm recording this so you can go back and watch it at a later time. I'm going to put it in Traineal, as well as our interview process. I'll actually document that. It wasn't in Traineal before, but I'll put that in Traineal as well. So let's talk about W2 sales representatives and kind of what are the pros and the cons. We pretty much have built our entire business off hiring W2 sales reps. The pros and really why I've always liked hiring W2 sales reps is you get to control, their time. So employees have more control over W2 employees, work hours, getting them to follow processes and training and just keeping them accountable. You're buying their time for at least 40 hours every week. I've found you get more loyalty and commitment from a W2 employee because you are committing a salary to those people, therefore they're going to be more loyal to you. So when you look at W2 employees, they often exhibit higher levels of company loyalty and commitment since they are part of growing the organization and they feel part of it when they're W2 versus just a contract salesperson. And then finally, another great pro is training and development. So employers can provide extensive training and professional development, which what that's going to do, it's just going to foster better performance and consistent sales. And that consistent sales is really important because you're going to set quotas on your sales reps and have these minimum goals, minimum activity goals, minimum sales quotas, and you're able to keep them accountable because they are a W2 sales representative. Some cons, probably the biggest con is the fact that it's capital intensive. So employees that are W2 workers leads to higher cost. This includes salary. You've got a employer payroll tax, and if you're offering benefits, you've got benefits. Second is just making sure you do your regulatory requirements correctly. One of the things we've always done is use a payroll service instead of doing it ourselves. So we use Sure Payroll, and they help us make sure that everything's from each state. When we've had reps in multiple states, we're, from a regulatory standpoint, we've got everything buttoned up correctly. So you've got, withholding income tax, paying the employer tax, and just complying with state labor laws as well as federal labor laws. Another con that really goes back up to being capital intensive is just when you're hiring W-2 representatives and you make a hiring mistake, the wrong hire can cost you tons of money. And I've made this mistake many, many times in my career. I go through our recruiting process. I get really excited about a rep. They do, they check all the boxes. And then once they start, they just don't have that worth ethic. They can communicate well, they ask great questions, and you think they're going to be a great rep. And then they just won't put in the activity to be successful. One thing I will kind of caveat and note here on when you're hiring, you want to hire slowly but fire fast. If you make a mistake, I find you're typically going to know in the first 2 to 4 weeks, and you're not helping them or yourself by keeping them and trying to train them up. If it's a work ethic issue, if it's a training issue, that's one thing. But if it's just they're not putting in the reps and making the calls, then you just need to, you need to part ways at that point. And you can put them on a probationary period, right? So it's easy from a regulatory standpoint just to get rid of them. So 1099 sales representatives, we've had a couple over the years. Typically, we've converted people over from W-2 to 1099 for various reasons. A couple reasons we've had people that have kind of semi-retired. They were with us for many, many years. I've had a lot of success with older reps that may have, wanting to, they kind of got themselves in a position where they were making a lot of money in the corporate world. They got downsized, and then we were able to pick them up. And then they worked for me for 5 or 6 years, and at that point, they're in their 60s and they're wanting to slow down, so they have moved to 1099, and that's worked pretty well for me in a couple situations. So the biggest pro is its cost efficiency. When you're hiring 1099 reps, it can be more cost effective as there's no salary, benefits, or employer taxes. It reduces liability. So typically, you got fewer legal responsibilities when it comes to like workplace laws and minimum wage and overtime. And so it definitely reduces liability. And it gives you flexibility to adjust your workforce without, having legal issues, layoffs, terminations. So there are some benefits definitely to a 1099 sales representative. Some of the cons, you don't really have much control at all, right? At the end of the day, these are contract employees, so you can't force them to work. You can't force them to do certain hours. If you're doing that, then from a legal standpoint, they are considered an actual employee of your business. Second is just that variable loyalty and engagement. Many independent contractors, especially in the sales world, they're going to be juggling multiple gigs. You're not going to be their full-time gig in many cases. Maybe they're selling merchant processing or another software on the side, and they're adding you to their book of business. And so that can be a big challenge in creating great loyalty and engagement and consistent sales, right? If they're not out consistently calling on people, following up, it makes it really challenging. I've found in just talking with people that have built large 1099 sales teams, you might have to hire 20 to get 2 or 3 to consistently bring deals to your business. So you're doing a ton of recruiting, you're spending money on recruiting, a lot less in a salary, but you become a real recruiter because you're going to have people falling off, and you got to continue to recruit every single month to make sure you're continuing to get new businesses. Next is just training. Contractors are expected to be self-sufficient. So the challenge there is, they can show up for training, but maybe they don't. They just use the information you send them. And so it does potentially lead to some inconsistencies in the approach and quality that you want to have when presenting your brand. And if you don't properly vet or offer the proper tools for success, you're less likely to see a 1099 sales rep be successful. Quite frankly, we even see this challenge in some of our white label business where, we're here to provide a platform and training, but the 80/20 rule still kind of comes into effect. 20% of our partners, they jump in, they show up to meetings, they do the training fast, they start getting out and managing and running the business. And then you've got a big percentage that are busy doing their other corporate job or whatever it may be, and it makes it for a slower launch for them. So you know, we deal with the same kind of issues with partners that you would with a 1099 sales rep. So talk a little bit about W-2 compensation recommendations. Um, we've not really done option two, but it has worked, and we've got a partner that may actually be on the call that has really done well with option two. It's been a successful. I'll share the different options, but option two has definitely been a successful way people have went about it. We just never really went that route. What we've always done is option one. So we had a minimum salary. Um, Ours is a little bit higher than this now, but I would recommend a minimum salary of 3,000 a month. The reason you want to have a salary that's at least 3,000 a month is they've got to be able to feed their family and like be able to work. If they're always worried about like, you know, literally like desperate to make money, then they make bad decisions. They sell without as much integrity potentially. You just run into more issues. So I've always wanted to give them a decent compensation and then give them the ability to grow to a six-figure income, you know, in a 2-year period or so. So salary 3,000 minimum, acquisition bonus somewhere between 150 to $300, and that's that, you know, when you sign up a new customer, you can have a onboarding fee or a um, you know, setup fee to kind of offset that acquisition bonus. And then a monthly residual. The monthly residual is really important because that's where they're going to see themselves building reoccurring revenue and growing to a six-figure income in that second year, third year. And I would do that monthly residual between, you know, somewhere between 5 and 10%. So typically you're going to see an ROI of about 8 months. So when I say ROI, if you get a good rep, then this means the rep stays. Within 8 months, you've recouped all your money and you're making money each month off that rep. But typically it's about 8 months. Um, that's been the case for us since 2000. I guess I hired my first rep in 2012. So if I hired a good rep and my recruiting was good and I did a good job making sure it was the right person, almost every time I had a return on investment within that 8 month period. But it is a risk, right? Because you're paying the salary, and there's definitely a risk there that, you know, they don't succeed. Option two is a guaranteed draw. And so what a draw means is, let's say you're going to give them a 2,000 a month minimum, and this is again just recommendations. So every commission they earn, they have to pay back the draw first. Now, I call it a guaranteed draw because you're not going to claw back month after month. Like no matter what, they're going to get $2,000 a month. Again, they are W-2, so you are controlling their time and they work for you full time. But their first $2,000 of acquisition bonus and commission goes towards that guaranteed draw. And then everything above that is what they make in commissions. And so what I recommend as far as the acquisition bonus there is giving them 100% of whatever setup fee they get. So if they get 500 bucks, they get to keep $500. So at $500, if they closed four, everything after the four, they would get 100% up, right? Because they got to pay back the guarantee. In option two, you want to pay higher monthly residuals. One that's going to help them offset that draw quicker, and it's going to help them see a path to six figures a lot faster as well. So I would recommend a residual commission there between 20 and 25%. Because of the guaranteed draw, your typical ROI in this scenario is going to be about 3 months. I'm going to share. Let me share my screen here. I want to show you income forecasting tool here. So you've all probably seen this income forecasting tool. There's a couple tabs here. You've got the salaried sales model and the commission only model. So you can kind of play with the numbers when you're building out your model. So if let's say the setup fees 350, monthly salaries 3,000, and then we've got the sales acquisition bonus at 200. You can change that to 300 or 150 or whatever you want to offer. And I've got the commission here set to 10%. So you can play with these numbers, say, well, maybe I want to go to 15 or maybe I want to go to 5, and you'll be able to see what the model looks like. In this case, for today's purposes, I removed the owner selling, and I just put it at 1 rep year 1, 3 reps year 2, and 5 reps year 3. And to the middle here, you can see kind of year one revenue, year two, and year three. Year one, you can see you're building that recurring revenue, but you go into year two, it really compounds quite nicely going into year two. Year one, you're not going to make a ton of money when you're hiring reps because again, it takes 8 months for you to get that, for you to get your return on investment back. And you can kind of see that return on investment down here if you go to income and you just go over here and you can see here, in this case, at month 9, I've made $1,000 off that rep. Month 10, I'm making 3,000. Month 11, 3,800. Month 12, 4,400. And it just starts compounding as you add more reps. And you can change the number of locations to see what that does to it. So at 4, at 4, you're losing money year one. Our quota for our reps has always been six paid locations per month. And that, it's really 159 times 6 is what we have as their new business quota each month. Feel free if you need to jump in and ask questions, just feel free to unmute yourself. I know it's a lot of information. So 1099 compensation recommendations, it's pretty simple. Give them 100% of the acquisition bonus so they get to decide on how much they're going to make. If they want to win a piece of business and not have a setup fee or an onboarding fee, then they don't get any acquisition bonus. But if they want to charge $500, you may put a max on it so that they're successful. We typically have never went above $500 as a setup fee in our business. And then monthly residuals, somewhere between 25 and 40%. Again, you want to incentivize these people to spend time on your business, not another business. And so the better you can make the commissions, the better off they're going to stick. One thing I would do though is like have them have a minimum to keep that commission. So they may need to close one deal a month or one deal a quarter to continue to get their monthly residuals so that they don't necessarily get residuals forever. Another option is you can actually, say once they get up a certain amount of monthly residuals, say $2,000 a month, they get lifetime residuals as long as they're above a certain threshold of commissions. But they're gonna, if they get to 2,000, they're gonna, in most cases, want to keep, they know the business, they're having success with the business, and so I think that's gonna really keep them around. So you can kind of manipulate that a little bit, but I definitely would recommend having some minimums for them to keep those lifetime residuals. Also in the income forecasting tool that we have, we've got the commission only sales model here. You can, you see here what the acquisition bonus is. Sales rep, 30%. I've only got, in this case, the number of locations per month per rep is 1 because they're not going to close in most cases 6. If you can average 1 per rep, that's going to probably be pretty good in the 1099 world. So in this case, I've got 10 reps. A lot of them you're going to be recruiting constantly, but if you can get 10 active reps, you're likely to be consistently closing, 10 new locations a month. All
right. Hey, Joe.
Yes.
This is Mike Foote. I'm in Kansas City.
Hey, Mike.
I replied back to your email, but do you have something like this for a 1099 rep that you could show income potential income they could make?
Yeah,
a spreadsheet like this.
You can just take
just
take this model and remove your cost. You can use it. You can just copy this.
Take out the cost of goods.
Yeah, you just duplicate it, and it would show what they're making down here.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
You can just use this exact model.
I'm not real Excel. I'm not very smart.
Well, I mean, literally, you could just hide this right here. You just go right click and hide, and then you could hide your income. And then it's going to just show what their compensation is. Just put 1 rep, 1, 1, 1, and they can see what they're going to earn over a 3-year period. Just hide some cells.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. We got a question here. How much of a $350 acquisition bonus do they get to keep? Stephen, that's up to you. What my recommendation is, was just going through on the presentation is I give them 100% if it's a 1099, and I'll let them choose what they're going to do as as far as the acquisition, what they're going to charge on the setup fee because they are getting 100%. They're more likely to try to get more because they get 100% of it. Obviously, it's different. I don't know if you joined late. We went through the W-2, so you can go back and watch the video, but it's different on the W-2 of what we do.
The 10% commission on the W-2 that goes all for the entire life cycle of the contract of the client that they brought onto the table.
Yeah, as long as they're employed, I pay residual commissions to my W-2 employees. Like I've got a sales rep that almost makes, I guess his commissions are almost six figures now. Well, his commissions are over six figures because he's been with me for 10 years. Just commissions. Does that answer your question? Is that the question you were asking?
So on the day, the first day, first month, let us say one store is closed, right? That's a 10% there. That goes all the way if they're with us for like 20 years.
As long as they're employed, I don't mind paying them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If they're not employed, if they're not an employee, they don't get paid. But as long as they're employed, yep.
Okay.
And on the 1099, I would set some minimums for them. They have to close one a quarter, to make sure they, to make sure they're actively replacing the customers are going to use. You can kind of put that in place. Some companies don't. They just say you get a lifetime residual for closing it. It's up to you to make that decision. When you're building out your 1099 sales fee, your 1099 sales team. Got another question. What about the kiosk cost? Wouldn't it get prohibitively expensive if the client has to pay $350 and the kiosk $300 kiosk cost? That is correct. And if you want them to purchase the kiosk, then you've got to figure out your investment. Like, are you willing? In the early days, I still paid it even though I'm buying all the kiosk, right? So I mean, I was investing in building a large company in the future, so you have to invest, and so no matter, I would still pay the acquisition bonus even though I had to buy the kiosk. But we actually do financing for you guys, so that becomes, you're paying $10 a month, so it's just a cost of good at that point. So if you're doing the financing, it's not as big of an issue. But yeah, you definitely want to look at, like, based on that. If you're trying to charge another $350 for the kiosk, it does make it a little bit harder sell for that purpose.
Also, Joe, there are minimum loss for a W-2 employee, right, to meet 60K close to. If not, they will be entitled to overtime pay 1.5 times and all that. A recent loss that came in, correct?
I'm not sure the question.
So W-2 employees, the minimum pay of 60K is the recent law that was approved. If not, they will be entitled to overtime pay of 1.5 times or so.
I've not. There may be a state law, but I've not seen any law. I mean, of 60K as a minimum. How would any restaurant stay in business? I'm not familiar with that.
No,
law.
It's not mandatory to pay 60K, but if you don't pay 60K, right, yearly, if W-2, then they'll be entitled to overtime pay if they're crossing the 40 hours per week, right?
I can't give legal advice, but I mean, I've not run into that issue, and obviously we don't have employees in every state. Maybe that's a state law. I haven't seen that come to federal law. But
what I'm trying to get to is, like, the 3,000, for example, is 36K at the minimum, right? So are we going to run into any kind of other obligations because of that, is my concern. If you put it 3,000.
I would say talk to your CPA and employee attorneys.
Okay.
I can't give legal advice. We've never run into that issue with all of our employees.
Okay.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if they're only working 40 hours a week, there's not overtime pay anyway as a sales rep. Now, if they don't typically sales reps don't track that anyway. So I haven't run into that issue. So, but yeah, I would get advice from a professional on that. I can't really give that kind of legal advice. So here's where we recruited. We've used Indeed for years. We've used ZipRecruiter. Those are kind of the two we've used. If you're doing 1099, you got to be really careful with the language. If you're doing W-2, it's super simple. Also post on your social media, obviously, especially LinkedIn, and make multiple posts about you looking for people. I think that's just a great way to let people know they may have a son or a daughter, or maybe they're looking, you got a friend or a friend of a friend that's looking for something. So it's a great way to find some leads. And finally, recruiting great wait staff and bartenders. This is something I've used over the years, where if you see someone that is like, just does a fantastic job, as a waiter or waitress, or a bartender, they're in the service industry. They're usually really good communicators. And it's hard for them sometimes to get out of that industry because they don't have professional experience. And so they're a great opportunity to pick people up. Now, one of the challenges there is they don't have any sales training. So you got to really focus on making sure they get trained well. But it's worked well for us over the years. So what to look for, what we've kind of determined that is, makes a good sales rep. This is not only us, this is kind of different studies that have been done. Some of these are just very, very obvious, but I'll kind of just touch on some of the things about them that have been important to me. Obviously, communication skills is important, but more importantly for me is listening skills. If I can communicate, ask great questions, and listen, and I see a rep doing that, I know they got a really good chance of being a very, very successful rep. Some of the very best reps do less talking and do more listening. And I always like the old adage, we got two ears and one mouth for a reason. Listen twice as much as you talk. And so really, if you can find someone with great listening skills that is curious, can ask a lot of questions, that's going to be great. Being persuasive, being able to, convince potential customers of the benefits of the product and service that you've got is going to be very, very important in having a successful, salesperson. Negotiating skills. And really what's important about negotiating skills is in every call, someone's, you're trying to sell them on why this is going to benefit their business. They're trying to sell you on why it's not. And you got to negotiate through that. Even if you're not negotiating on pricing, you have to sell why the price is, inexpensive compared to the value that they're going to be getting. And that takes good negotiating skills. Resilience and persistence. I mean, you can have a really great communicator, really, really great listener, but if they can't handle rejection and they're not resilient and persistent day in and day out, I don't care how great the product is, they're just not gonna be successful. They got to be able to handle rejection. They got to be determined to go day in and day out, to kind of get the flywheel going and get the top of the funnel built so that it push stuff out at the bottom. Self-motivation. Sales is hard, and it's so easy to focus on the wrong things. And if you're self-motivated, you typically find a way to focus on the things that are going to be revenue producing. And this goes for our white label partners too. I find a lot of partners that fail. They may think they're self-motivated, but they tend to focus on the wrong things instead of revenue producing things. And the things, like I always say, revenue solves almost all problems. Go out, get customers, get revenue, build confidence, build momentum. And, a self motivator is going to do that because they're goal oriented. They're going to have targets. They're going to, be focused on those targets. And typically, those targets are going to be really revenue based because that's what's going to make you successful. Posting something on social media, not going to make you successful. Getting out and talking to businesses, that's what's going to make you successful. Adaptability, just being flexible, able to adjust tactics and strategies. We provide a lot of training and kind of how we approach it. But we're always experimenting. Like we have our processes, but we're always trying to enhance that. And we're very flexible and adaptable in our business. And we're really focused on learning and learn new tools, whether it's automation in a CRM, like having that ability to adapt to the changing world using Chat GPT. There's always new things coming out, and how can that help you be more effective in giving you more time for revenue producing activities? Customer focused. This is one is important, but if they're just a closer and they're not managing accounts, I'll let this one slide a little bit as long as they are curious and want to help people. If someone's got that ability, that empathy, and they're willing to go out and they want to help people, if they're not necessarily, always customer focused, I would be a little bit okay with that as long as they have those other skills. Technical skills, they're important. They're not like at the top of the list. But they do need to have a deep understanding of the product features, benefits, and the potential drawbacks. And that just takes them spending some time in it. We always look for people that are, have a little bit of technology proficiency. But I've had great reps that didn't have a whole lot of technology proficiency that have been very, very successful in our business. It just took more to train them up on how to use our CRM systems and how to really make sure that they are using our processes, because you'll find a lot of salespeople. You got to be careful with some that just kind of wing it because they're so good communicators. They've got, charisma, and you want something that's repeatable, and you want to create processes that are repeatable. And some of those sales reps, especially as W-2 sales reps, can actually be a bit of a cancer to your organization. You want everyone to kind of be rowing in the same direction, working towards the same vision. If I've got someone that's a huge closer, but he's not willing to be a part of the company and the processes, I'd prefer to have someone that's just a little bit less successful that helps the whole team grow, because of, when you're having W-2s, you don't want to really create some of those challenges that happen when you have someone that just kind of always breaking the rules and doesn't want to follow processes. I think integrity goes without question. It's your brand that you're creating. You want to have, get people that are honest and not going out there and just making stuff up. That's why training's so important. They don't know. The type of person that says, I don't know, let me get back to you. And people that are very transparent. If you're hiring W-2, I think a cultural fit's really important, probably less important for 1099. But it would be nice to know that for 1099, you're still getting a culture fit. But it's harder when you're not paying them a salary to really, go through the entire process that you would go through with a W-2 on the recruiting process and the interview process, because they're going to lose interest because there's 10 other people wanting to hire for 1099. So that was a little bit more challenging for 1099. And it's also kind of last, not a given, but it is definitely something that is a given for me when I'm hiring W-2. I want some experience and some track record, especially if you're hiring your first rep. You want someone that's got a little bit of experience. They've sold something out to small businesses. They've made tons of calls, because if they've never experienced that, and on paper they're like, oh yeah, I can do this, and it's, you may end up making a bad decision if they don't have an experience and track record. I've hired people with that experience and track record that have worked out, but I've also hired people that didn't work out, and I've probably hired more that didn't work out because of that. So I would just be really, really cautious of that. Also, when I'm hiring W-2 employees, very rarely will I hire someone that is not leaving a job, because too many times I've had it happen. I have hired people that were unemployed, and I'll lose those pretty quickly because they'll take any job in many cases. And so they're not committed. But if I get someone that believes in the vision, believes in the company, and they're leaving a job to come for me, one, that puts a lot of pressure on me to make sure I train them well and give them the opportunity to be successful. But if they're leaving a job, they believe in the business, they believe in the vision, and they believe in the product. And so you're more likely to get a better rep at that point. All right. Any questions before I jump into the sales hiring process that we use? Perfect.
Hey, I was actually sorry, Joe. Your W-2 guys that you hire, are they like inside sales guys? Are they all outside? Are they hybrid? How do you do it? They banging out phone calls or beating on doors?
Both. I typically have a blitz once a week, and they're I have remote ones as well because we're not just in our one area, but yeah, typically outside sales reps, but they do hit the phones every day. They're out in the field performing meetings, and they're also walking indoors in between meetings. So it's a bit of all three. And then I've even hired, I don't have any right now, but at one point we even had appointment setters setting appointments for our outside sales reps. All right, there's a lot of information on here, so I'll kind of try to make it condensed for you guys, but our sales hiring process is really a 4-step process. You know, obviously you've got to post the job on the job board, go through and do your process to figure out who do you want to do a phone interview with. We do the phone interview just like any meeting, whether it's an interview or if someone I'm meeting with about a business, I always state the agenda. The first call, typically I set the expectations of what the call is going to be. So the first call is about 15 to 30 minutes is what we do. And then what I'm doing is asking them a few questions. I'm sharing information about the role, set expectations of the role. I go ahead and get the compensation discussion out to make sure we're not wasting each other's time. I'll walk through a week in the life. So to answer, I think that was Mike that asked the question. I actually walked through what does a week in the life look like for one of our outside sales reps. And then I walk them through what the recruiting process looks like so they can know what to expect as they go through the recruiting process, get their buy-in, and I go through a few questions. Again, share the information about the role, and then I share our recruiting process. Step 2, if I would like to invite them to move forward, I'm going to email them and I'm going to get them to answer some questions. And I go ahead and lay out the agenda for the Zoom interview too, because if I'm emailing them, I'm also inviting them to do either a Zoom webinar, a Zoom interview, or they'll come into the office face to face, depending on where they're at. So one thing I'm doing is I've just got 6 questions I ask. And the idea behind this is, you know, the questions are good. I get to learn some stuff about them, but I get to see their written communication skills and I get to see how much effort, a little bit about their work ethic and how much time they put into to the questions. I think you'll have a tough time getting 1099 reps to go through this process. But W-2 sales reps, we've never had that issue. And it's cool. Some of these questions I put in their file and I can go back and, you know, look at as their employees, and there's some really good information that I get to learn about them when we're going into the Zoom interview. It kind of just lightens the load a little bit when we're talking on the face to face. Then in the Zoom interview, we're going to go a little bit deeper in some of the Q&A. 4 things I'm looking for, and I don't necessarily go through all of the questions, but I want to find out if they're service oriented. My number one value and the value that I teach as part of our company is we are servants. And so I look for service oriented people, for every position I look for. So it's super important for me in our culture to have that. And I've got a few service questions in there. I don't necessarily ask them all. Second is I'm trying to figure out their grit. And I've got like this little system 1, 2, and 3, and I kind of will make little notes as I'm doing the interview to kind of grade them. But I'm looking for grit, you know, and kind of figuring out what are they doing to help themselves grow. And then I'm looking for intuitiveness, curiosity, and empathy. And so I've got some questions around that as well. If everything's good around that interview, I'll invite them for the final interview. The final interview, what I do is I actually send them the presentation with the talking points. And I have them study the presentation, study the agenda that we use when we're meeting with potential prospects, and actually come and role play and present it to me. It's hard, it's challenging, but I really get to learn, like they get to learn if they like the product, they can envision themselves selling the product. I've had people buy out at that time, which saved me money and it saved them time as well. And it again shows some work ethic. I can see how much time they spent preparing for that meeting. So that's been very successful for us. This is the process, a version of the process we've used really since 2012. A lot of this is based on just different books I've read, different HR strategies that are out there that I kind of molded into my own to try to get the best reps we could get. Awesome. Well, now we'll just do Q&A. I'm gonna stop the recording.